Hey, what's up YouTube? It's your boy Barlow B Theorizing, and welcome back to the Barlow Zone, home of the one and only demon hunter King Kaido, himself sent to Azeroth. How's everybody doing today? I hope y'all having an amazing day. I real quick want to apologize. I was watching my video the other day and I noticed I was looking a little red. Sometimes wearing this hoodie when shooting the videos is a bad thing. I will try to make sure. I can't imagine that was very fun to look at, so I'll try to make sure I'm taking whatever steps I need to make sure the video's looking and sounding as best as I can give for you guys. But I did want to come and talk today because now I'm not sure if I'm going to post this today or tomorrow. I just uploaded yesterday. I don't know. I don't want to flood the channel like I did in my first attempt a little over a year ago, where I just dropped a whole bunch of videos all at once and kind of got dissuaded. I may end up waiting, but I just got done watching Liam and Matt's chapter review videos, both peak. By the way, I really enjoy their content. The way they edit things together, the way they transition, it's really something nice to watch. And I'll be honest, not a skill I have just quite yet, but you keep watching the greats, there's a chance that you might pick on something that can help you get better, right? So I'm hoping everybody really enjoyed their videos, at least as much as I did. It's always fun to see other people nerding out about stuff, especially something I also like to nerd out about. But in the process of watching the videos, because they do the full review, they'll start at the cover story, go through all the points that they think are interesting or might amount to something. Me, I just like to share the thoughts I had when I'm reading the chapter, right? So I didn't really feel a pressing need to discuss the cover story, mostly because I kind of already figured a lot of people were going to make the connection with Gekkou Moria, right? And I admit, I did myself as well. I was very much at the whims of Oda on that one, because you put a known character's name into a situation like that, you're kind of baiting everybody and trying to get everybody to make this connection, right? And then I think it was Liam, because I watched his video first. He mentioned that the kanji for Gekkou, believe it was Gekkou, and the kanji for Kozuki are mirror images of each other. Now that's something I never caught on to, because even when I do look at the raw scans, I'm just looking at the paneling, I'm looking at the framing, I'm looking at character designs, emotions that can be read by how the characters are drawn, right? I generally don't pay attention to really any of the lettering, because I don't understand Japanese. I don't speak Japanese, and I don't want to be rude to their culture by, maybe mispronouncing something or talking about kanji that I don't fully understand. But, I have faith in these other channels. They've been very solid and reliable. So if sorry about the shake there, but if Liam was willing to put that into his video, I give it a little more weight that the person that posted that, and I did notice in the comments, I guess it's a 7-year-old post on Reddit talking about the kanji for Gekkou and for Kozuki. But in the process of listening to Matt's video, or not Matt, sorry, I did kind of get some takeaway from Tekking's videos as well, but the inspiration for me wanting to talk about this today is largely because of the first half of Liam's chapter review. And I had two thoughts spawn from that, because he made a very good argument, right? And I imagine some of that stuff he put together because his channel's always been really good about researching. I imagine some of it's probably gleaned from comments left on videos, gleaned from conversations he may be having with fans on other platforms. But he made a very compelling argument, and I even found myself wondering, okay, this is kind of something Oda would do, right? The naming scheme and all that. But then I got to thinking, and I had two thoughts really stick with me as as GLR transitioned out of the cover story into the rest of the chapter review, right? And if we are going to kind of assume or continue under the premise that this Kozuki Moria is one and the same with Gekkou Moria, right? We have two plot holes that need to be answered if that's the case. So please let me know in the comments, do you have the answers I'm looking for? Because I really like this theory, I really like this idea, and I would love to be able to buy into it. But as long as these two questions remain unanswered, it is very hard for me to buy into it, no matter how much I love the theory or how much well it sits on the brain, right? The first problem is Ace. Ace spent, maybe not an exaggerated amount of time on Wano, right? But he spent some time on Wano. Him and Yamato, he was there long enough that he gained Yamato's trust and he became a friend to her, right? So Ace is a plot hole if Gekkou Moria is Kozuki Moria, because Ace speaks Japanese. At least we kind of got to assume Japanese is to use a D&D term, common language in the One Piece world, right? Because it's Oda's native language. It's the language it's originally printed in. While there are references to just about every culture on the planet within the story, it does seem like Japanese is the common, for lack of a better term for that. The language most people speak, whatever, can understand. So Ace would have had some comprehension of even if they don't call it kanji, the symbols that were on this grave marker, right? And he would have been able to make the connection like, oh, hey, there's a warlord out there right now who kind of has the same name as this guy. Like, do you know anything about a connection here, Yamato? So that's kind of the first plot hole, because this grave marker does appear to be important culturally speaking, right? Like, it's part of Yamato's pilgrimage. So, pilgrimages are spiritual journeys that somebody goes on to gain enlightenment or knowledge of what they need to do with their life, what they want to do, the direction their life needs to go, right? So you don't traditionally make stops on a pilgrimage outside of important spiritual locations. And the second plot hole is Kaido himself, King Kaido. Like, come on, dude. Like, Kaido mopped the floor with Gekkou Moria, right? Like, absolutely clean dude's clock. Like, it was a one-sided beatdown to the point that Gekkou Moria gave up on everything. Went from being in contention to be Timothy Chadson to Chonk Boy Supreme. And like, I know Moria has gone through a bit of an appearance change since his fight with Kaido, right? Like I mentioned, back then, 23 years ago, he looked like he was contending for Timothy Chadson. Dude was cut, dude was stacked, had that bad sword. And things changed after he got beat around a little bit, right? But did Moria's appearance change enough that we can justify Kaido not recognizing him? Because, like, let's take a look at it. Yeah, 23 years ago, Moria was a beast. Dude was cut, dude was carved. He was a Greek god carved out of marble, right? And, that's obviously not what he was last time we saw him. But he still had the pale skin. He still had the horns. He still had the hair color. He still had the hair. There was 5 of them. Hold on. I am kind of doing this out of order. Oh, and the long neck. How did I forget the neck? Now, admittedly, 23 years ago, the neck wasn't as pronounced. I probably got a screenshot up here for you guys to see. But it was still a bit longer than most necks you see. Part of the long neck tribe? Maybe not. But we do know that his appearance changed a little bit because, like I said, now he's Chonk Boy Supreme. Dude's all stitched up. His chin kind of blended in with his neck. Oh, very Ochoko of him. But I don't know. I don't feel like, maybe I'm giving too much credit to King Kaido, right? Maybe I'm giving too much intellectual prowess to a man that, honestly, I don't know. Like, we could kind of glean a lot of information, but we've never really gotten any confirmation that Kaido was an especially intelligent character, right? Plus, you got the whole alcoholism angle. Once you start getting heavy into any kind of drug, it starts to skew your ability to perceive the world around you for what it is, right? So, while I do see these as plot holes, I got a couple things here. As I mentioned with Kaido, Moria's appearance hasn't really changed that much. I mean, if you had a really close friend, I'm going to say friend, but we could even slot a rival into this, right? You had a really close friend or rival from high school, right? Like somebody you would interact with every day, good or bad. And then, like happens a lot of times after school, you kind of fall out of touch getting into doing the adult life thing, right? Like, it's not uncommon for people who were connected in high school to fall out of touch for a while, right? And then you see them a decade later and they're like 300 pounds. You're all, just because they're 300 pounds doesn't mean you stop recognizing them. As soon as you see them, you're all, oh man, it's been a while. You go up, you give them the dab, you're all, hey, give me a hug, fam. Or you're all, hey, I still remember what you did to me, fam. Like, nah, we about to run them ones, let's go. Point being, just because somebody's put on weight doesn't mean you stop recognizing them. So I do believe, unless somebody's got a better answer for me, Kaido does remain a plot hole. Now, admittedly, with Ace, it's a little less clear on him being a plot hole if the Gekkou Moria being Kozuki Moria is the case, right? Because it's entirely possible Ace never saw this grave marker, right? We do know him and Yamato had many conversations together. We know that Yamato came to respect Ace and kind of look up to him as a brother of sorts. So it's not unreasonable to think that at some point, because this Kozuki Moria figure is such an important cultural and potentially even spiritual figure, that Yamato shared the story at least. And maybe Ace wouldn't have gotten to see the kanji or the symboling, the lettering of the name, right? But hearing the name Kozuki Moria still likely would have sparked something in Ace's brain where it's all, wait, Kozuki, that's Moonlight, right? Like, isn't Gekkou also Moonlight? Hey, can you write that name down for me real quick? Like, even if Ace never personally laid eyes on this grave marker, Yamato still likely shared that story because of what it meant to her and how close her and Ace had become during his time on Wano. Now, it was also mentioned by Liam, and I believe Matt mentioned it in his video as well, about Wano being isolated, right? They didn't get newspapers. They weren't connected with the outside world. For more or less, for better or for worse, Wano was the entirety of the world to the people of Wano. It was all that mattered. It was all they cared about. And they knew they were safe. So Wano as a country never really got involved with the ongoings or the events of the outside world, right? There were a few outliers. Ryuma left. Oh no, that's right. Ryuma got stolen. He never left. Odin. I'm blanking. I was trying to remember the name of Zoro's village when I said Ryuma. But they were all, or a good portion of them were former Wano residents. So we do know, at least some of the Wano residents, for whatever reason, would decide to leave the country, go explore, do their own thing, whatever it may be. And some of them came back. Aside from that, so like even just that as a starting point means that at minimum, Wano had at least a slightly outdated grasp on what was going on in the world around them, right? But aside from that, as I mentioned, Ace spent, a non-insignificant amount of time on Wano with Yamato, right? And Ace very much had his fingers on the zeitgeist of the outside world. Like he knew what was going on. Papa Whitebeard's ship got newspapers delivered constantly. Like the Whitebeard pirates were not out of the loop. And being part of the Whitebeard pirates, Ace would have been in the loop. I want to say to a certain extent, but I mean, come on, man. Like we've got panels of Ace actually reading the newspapers. It was something he was interested in. Ace knew what was going on. So him having spent time there means that at least Yamato would have had more information on what was going on in the outside world. I do believe, if I'm remembering right, there was even a point in time where some of the retainers were locked up with them as well. So potentially they overheard something that they shared with other people as well. But beyond that, Kaido himself was active in the outside world. Kaido knew what was going on. He would have heard about this warlord Gekkou Moria, right? And even in a drunken stupor, you're reading a newspaper and you see Gekkou Moria, you look down, you see a picture. I'm like, hold on. Hey, King, I know I might be kind of three sheets to the wind right now, fam, but doesn't this look like that dude I beat the hell out of 13 years ago? Just fat. Like, come on, man. Again, like I said, maybe I'm just giving too much credit to Kaido, right? I don't think I am, man. Like, I've known a few alcoholics in my life, and memory, it fades, right? It starts to go, but important events, like they stick in the brain longer than most other information. So, even as bad as Kaido was with the drinking, I still think that he would have saw this pale blue dude with purple hair, horns, and been all, I swear I beat the hell out of this guy. Don't I have a grave marker over on the mainland because everybody thinks I blew this guy's entire body out of existence? Like, what's going on here? No, I at least he would have been interested in exploring that angle, right? But, as I like to do, because I don't want to just tear people's ideas apart. People are out here on the internet sharing their ideas just like I am. And, I expect my stuff to get torn apart too. That's part of the reason why I watch other creators' videos, is I'd like to see them talking about my ideas one day and like, hey, I like where you went, Barlow. You provided the logic, you provided the track, but it doesn't make sense, man. Like, here, I got to tear this one apart. You overcooked it. You were way out of bounds on this one. Like, I genuinely hope to see that one day, because I firmly believe a theory doesn't get better. A theory can't reach its final form until the community has had a chance to tear it apart and help build it back up. So, on that note, and in the, I guess, sense of sticking to that theme, I do have a theory of my own. That being that Kozuki Moria was Gekkou Moria's father. Now, I know it's easy, right? Like, oh man, Barlow, you're waving off the obvious one to pick an even lower hanging fruit, right? Like, and I admit, It is, especially with all the family stuff that's been going on in the story recently, right? And while I do admit that, my theory is just an alternative low-hanging fruit, we do need to realize that the initial theory about Kozuki Moria being Gekkou Moria is also a low-hanging fruit itself. So, yeah, you're right. I am brushing off the obvious low-hanging fruit to pick the one basically directly behind it. But let's take a quick look at what we know from the story so far, right? I mean, aside from the stuff I've already gone over with Ace and Kaido, as I mentioned, we do know that some of the Wano residents left the country to go do various other things. Some just wanted to explore. Some wanted to set up a civilization somewhere else and spread the influence of Wano. I'm sure some left just to kind of get a feel for what was going on in the world around them, trying to stay up to date as best they could. So my theory goes that Kozuki Moria, at some point earlier in his life, left Wano. Now, why did he leave Wano? I don't know. It could have been any number of things. It could have been simply to go exploring. It could have been because he is a Kozuki. He could have been going out to see if the outside world was ready for Wano to be reintroduced to it, right? It could have just been he wanted to go out, see if there were other strong people to fight, kind of like Odin. However you decide to think about it, there is a track to justify your decision on why Kozuki Moria left, right? And then sometime after he left, he fell in love with a woman from the West Blue. Now, why do I say West Blue? It's because that's where we know Gekkou Moria was born. So he went out, he fell in love, he had a baby, potentially even hung out for the first couple years of Moria's life, right? Was around. Now, that's unlikely because, as much as I talk about how bad good mothers have it in One Piece, fathers are so much worse. Like, I think Whitebeard might actually be the only example of oh no, I gotta throw Odin in there as well, but it's kind of curious that the two best fathers in One Piece are connected to each other. Also kind of curious that one of those two fathers did do the One Piece father thing and bounced. I ain't about to sit here and mess around with the kids. Like, y'all can come if you want, but I'm doing this anyway. While the other didn't actually have any kids of his own, he was more just the father to everybody he believed in and who chose to believe in him. So I don't think it's likely that Kozuki Moria stayed on whatever island Gekkou Moria was born on. I think it's more likely that some point after Gekkou Moria was born. Now keep in mind he is 50 years old. So at the time we are in the flashback, he would already be about 10 years old, somewhere between 10 to 12 years old around the time of the God Valley incident. So Gekkou Moria is already a thing in One Piece during this flashback, basically, right? But, sometime after Moria was born, Gekkou Moria was born, Kozuki Moria decided to go back to Wano. Whatever his reason for leaving had been completed. Or maybe he heard rumors that some powerful pirate was targeting Wano to make their base, and he said, nah, I gotta go protect my kin. And he went back and ultimately got just mopped up, just cleaned in, absolutely done dirty. And I do believe that his body was violently eviscerated from all of existence, because we know that Gekkou Moria himself did visit Wano at some point, because that's how he got his grubby hands on Ryuma. So that's kind of my theory on this one, right? Like, I really like the theory that was presented in Liam's video and then kind of supported in Matt's video, that Gekkou Moria and Kozuki Moria are one and the same. It kind of tracks. Let's see if Moria is going to be 12 at the time of the God Valley incident. We know that's about the time that, I don't know, I guess Moria probably would have been somewhere between 12 and 15, 12 and 17. I don't know, I'm figuring it took about 3 to 5 years after the God Valley incident for Kaido to fully engulf himself in wanting to take over Wano. I'll have to double check on that. I do apologize. If I find out I'm wrong there, I'll mention that in the next video. But I just think it's more likely that Kozuki Moria is Gekkou Moria's father. And aside from all this logic I'm trying to spin on it, we kind of have evidence from chapter 1158 itself to support this theory, right? Because what's kind of, yes, I know the chapter is called Rogers versus Rocks, right? Like, kind of curious. Oda loves doing that, this person versus that person, but we never really actually see them throw down. But like the big theme of chapter 1158 was the birth of these children that would go on to lead the future, right? Now, as I mentioned, at this time in the flashback, Gekkou Moria is already, sometime between 10 and 12 years old, being 50 years old in the current time. He would have been 10 at the 40-year mark. He'd be about 12 when the God Valley incident went down. With the connection, a lot of times the cover stories do connect with the theme of the chapter, right? And with the focus on the chapter being largely the Figureland twins, we got that mention of Marshall D. Teach potentially already being born with the bit where Shaggy was talking to Zebek at the bar, right? So we kind of have this theme of important future figures starting to be born. Now, I'm not saying Gekkou Moria is an important future figure. I'm not saying he's going to help lead or shape or define the future at all. I'm just saying that not only are these other kids born, right? You got Marshall D. Teach and you got the Figureland twins. But notably, none of these kids share... Okay. Teach doesn't share his father's name, and the Figureland twins don't share their mother's name, right? Like, Figureland is the celestial dragon family that Garland comes from, and Teach is assumedly the family that Marshall D. Teach's mother comes from. Because, Zebek is obviously not Teach. I don't know. Somebody want to look into the kanji on that? There might be something there. I'm sure somebody already has, so I don't know. We'll talk about it if that comes up, I guess. I feel like with all the hints and all the stuff that Oda's given us in this chapter, it's more likely that Kozuki Moria was Gekkou Moria's father. And honestly, personally, now this is just me, I kind of like that just a bit more, because as a whole, One Piece has been about transitions, right? Handing off control of the future to the next generation. So, as always, guys, I'd love to know what you think. Are you on board with Kozuki being Gekkou? Or do you have another theory separate from that one and my own? I'd love to hear about it. As always, you can find me on the socials, X and Twitter at BarlowBeTheorizing, or join me in the Discord community, the Barlow Zone. I will make sure I got links to all of that in the bio. And as always, I hope y'all have a great day. Much love, friends.